Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Shankaram Lokashankaram. So, we will just go back a little before we take up the verse which we are going to study today. We will go back to the 49th verse of the Vivekachudamani, where we find that the disciple has asked 7 questions to his teacher. Now, answering these 7 questions constitutes the rest of the Vivekachudamani. The teacher will gradually answer these 7 questions. Just to recapitulate, before we start today, what were those 7 questions? The 49th verse, let us read it and see that what are the 7 questions that the disciple is asking his teacher. Ko nama bandha, katham esha agatah, katham pratisthasya, katham vimoksha, kah asau anatma, parama ka atma, tayo viveka katham, etat uchyatam. So, the 7 questions. Ko nama bandha, the first question. So, what is bondage? That's the thing which the disciple is asking his teacher. The first question, that ko nama bandha, what is bondage? Katham esha agata, how has it come upon the self? That how the self got ensnared in this bondage. So that's the second question. Katham pratisthasya, the third question. That how does it continue to exist? Katham pratisthasya. So pratishtha. Pratishtha means the foundation. So anything which is founded continues to exist. So what's the reason for which it continues to exist? How does it continue to exist? That's the third question. Katham pratisthasya. And the fourth is katham vimoksha, that how is one freed from it? The fifth is ka asau anatma, what is non-self? Parama ka atma, what is the supreme self? And the last, tayo viveka katham. So how can one discriminate between this anatma and the paramatma, the non-self and the supreme self? So these are the questions. Etat uchyatam. Please answer me these questions. That's what the student is imploring to his teacher. Now, today we will start from the 69th verse, where we will find the teacher is taking up the 4th question at the beginning. He will be answering the 4th question first. Now what's the 4th question? That katham vimoksha, that how that one can be freed from this ignorance, from this bondage. So now the question comes that why the Guru is taking up the 4th question at the very beginning, at the very inception. So to understand this, let us try to relate to one of the Buddha's parable of a person who has been pierced by a poisoned arrow. In many other contexts, we have related that parable. The parable goes like that a man was pierced by a poisoned arrow and immediately he was taken to the doctor. Now what the doctor will do? Will he ask him who shot the arrow, why he shot the arrow, what's the poison he has used? By that time the patient will die. The doctor's first thing he has to do is to get rid of that arrow, surgically remove it and apply antidote so that the patient doesn't die. So that's the basic thing. First he will do that. After that, when the patient is recovering, then other questions do have some context. Yes, now the investigation can go on. But first, I have to save the life of the patient. So that's the parable of Buddha, which we find is very much applicable here. That why the teacher has taken up this question, that how to get rid of the bondage. Because the disciple's condition is just like the one who has been shot, who has been pierced by the poisoned arrow of samsara. That's the cause of his bondage. The one who is in bondage, the first thing is how he can be released from that. He will be more interested to know that. He will be eager to know that. That's the mumukshutvam. He will be yearning to get rid of it. And that's why we will find that teacher is taking up that question first. Once the disciple is saved, the other metaphysical questions can be attended. That's okay. So hence the Guru first proceeds to show him the way to be freed from the bondage and attain liberation. So what's the way out? In the next 2 verses, the process of liberation from the bondage is being enunciated in short. It will be again elaborated later in short in the 69th and in the 70th verse. It has been enunciated. What it is being spoken of in the 69th verse? Mokshasya hetuhu prathamo nigadyate vairagyam atyantam anitya vastushu tatah shama cha api damah titiksha nyasa prasaktam akhila karmanang bhrisham. Because the first step to liberation is extreme aversion. Vairagyam atyantam. It's not just tepid, torpid renunciation. The renunciation has to be extreme. It has to be intense. And that's what we indicated by the term Vairagyam Atyantam. That extreme aversion to all the things that are perishable. Anitya vastushu. And after that what follows? Tata Shamaha. And then follows the calmness of the mind. And Shama is followed by Dhamma. First comes the calmness of the mind. Then only comes the control of the senses. Unless our mind is calm, our attempt to control the senses is futile. So just like a car, I cannot just press the accelerator, the brake when I'm already pressing the accelerator. The both cannot be pressed together. It will damage the car. First I have to release the accelerator and then I have to press the brake. Releasing the accelerator is Shama. That I don't want to chase after the desires of life. That's what the pressing of the accelerator speaks. I have calmed down the mind and now I have to control the senses. Then I apply the brake. So, tata Shama cha api dhamma titiksha nyasa prasaktam akhila karmanam visham. And then forbearance. That the dualities of life will be there. I have to have that forbearance. Because in this life, suffering never comes from the circumstances, from the happenings of life. All our suffering is not from the happenings, from the incidents of life. All our suffering is the way we react to that. All the happenings are just happenings. They are just an incident. How I react to that, based on that, is my calmness or suffering, is my happiness, peacefulness or suffering. So this reaction is spoken of as titiksha, that we have already studied. What is titiksha? Sahanang sarva dukkhanam apratikara purvakam chinta vilapa rahitam sa titiksha nigatyate. So this has been this in Vivekachudamani previously when we were studying about the sadhana chatushtaya, the fourfold spiritual practices. We studied the definition of titiksha. Very nicely Shankaracharya our Bhagavad Pada Shankaracharya, is defining Titiksha. That what Sahanang Sarva Dukkhana, that you forbear all the sufferings, the challenges, the afflictions in life, apratikara purvakam, without trying to remedy it, to nullify it. And then chinta vilapa rahitam, that is very important. Sometimes when we find that the external circumstances are beyond my control, then I of course have to forbear them without reacting, without trying to just have any remedy, because I know the situation is such which is beyond my control. So many are there. Many have asked sometimes that we find that when some country that lot of violence is going on, riots are going on, or some lot of terrorist activities are going on, and we find the people become passive. They are as if not reacting to the situation. They take it as if their destiny. They appear to be very calm. One, after reading the life of Holy Mother, came and asked me this question. What's the difference? That Holy Mother is going through all the sufferings of life. She's going through all the sufferings. And she appears to be very calm. Nothing as if disturbs her. And she was saying it happens to anyone who knows there is no remedy behind the suffering. So here the second line will speak what's the difference. Chinta vilapa rahitam. The people who know there is no remedy, they become passive, not as if in any way challenging the situation, trying to remedy it, bearing it. But inside, a tremendous turmoil is going on. Chinta vilapa. Why am I in this situation? My life is cursed. Why I was born in this country, in this situation? This question, is there any way out? Constantly that grudge is going on. Chinta, his worry, and vilapa. This constantly, he is worrying, and inwardly, he is constantly having that grudge. That is vilapa. Worry and grudge is constantly going on. So that's the difference. When one is established in the self, the chinta vilapa, that factor is no more there. He knows the body, the mind, body-mind complex is going through the circumstantial incidences of life. It is going through. But I as a self am always unattached from it. I'm just the witness. And that way, such a person has no worries, no grudge, will be just forbearing them patiently, as if the body-mind complex is going through all those circumstantial suffering, but he as the eternal witness, or she as the eternal witness, is in no way affected by that. So that's been spoken of in the second life. Chinta vilapa rahitam sa titiksha nigatyate. So that is titiksha. So that speaks of the calmness of mind. That in spite of all the circumstances, the shama is not disturbed. The shama, dhamma, titiksha, and nyasa prasaktang akhila karmana. That relinquishment of all work enjoined in the scriptures. So what it actually is indicating, in the scriptures, in the Vedas, the Karma Kanda speaks of various sacrifices, which are all result-oriented. Putrishti yagya. All this in the desiring for your son, desiring for wealth. Various yagyas are there. The yagya for enjoying eternal life, as if eternal life. It's not eternal. It's compared to our present life, it is much, much prolonged. But it too has an end, as has been indicated in Bhagavad Gita. Kshine punye martya lokang vishanti. Again, you want to have to come down. When all our this good results which you have accrued, that is not infinite, that is finite, that one day will be exhausted, and again you have to come down. So it is not in true sense eternal, but whatever it may be, that all the yagyas are done with the idea of enjoying a sufficiently prolonged time in heaven. So all these actions which has that hankering of the result, that has been spoken of as the relinquishment of all work enjoined in the scriptures. It in no way actually speaks of getting rid of all work. This is the big mistake which we go on doing again and again, not only again and again. For hundreds of years we were doing that mistake. Shankaracharya, who himself is speaking of relinquishing work as enjoined in the scriptures, was the most busiest person in his days. Most busiest person. In the year 32 years, he has written the commentaries of Prasthanatraya, so many stotras on all gods and goddesses. Not only that, debating with all the various schools of philosophy to establish the supremacy of Advaita Vedanta, and not only that, traveling across India throughout the length of this India. He's traveling constantly. So he's extremely busy life. So this not relinquishment of karma, that we should have to remember always. If a relinquishment of karma has never been indicated, that speaks of, sometimes as we say, that Swami Vivekananda in one of his lectures, God in everything, that's actually his lecture on Isha Upanishad, there he's indicating a very funny allegory, that a king, while going to sleep, asked his servant, the servant was a monkey, the sevak, a monkey, to just see that the flies shouldn't disturb him. While sleeping, the flies may sit on him, on the king, and it may disturb his sleep. So the monkey's duty was to get rid of the fly. And now suddenly he saw, the monkey saw really a fly came, and it was again and again sitting on the nose of the king. And however the monkey was trying to get rid of it, it was flying off. And then at last the monkey took a resolve. I have to get rid of it, I have to kill it. And he took a sword in his hand. And now you can imagine that when the fly sat on the nose of the king, he simply just tried to kill the fly with the sword. And what has happened? He has just hurt the king itself. The king was almost bleeding to death. So that's what happened. That's what Swamiji is saying. If we try to relinquish the action, it's not a relinquishment of action which has been spoken of. The action has to go on, even for a realized soul. As long as the prarabdha is there, the impetus will make you even to sustain your body, and even for loka sangraha, as has been indicated in Bhagavad Gita. The actions will continue. It has to continue. It cannot stop. It cannot be abruptly stopped. As Sri Ramakrishna very nicely has told, that forcefully trying to renounce is just like forcefully removing the scab of the wound. It will lacerate the wound. It won't heal. It should fall itself. When the prarabdha is over, the body falls off, one attains atyantika mukti, karma is over. But before that, the karma has to go on, but without hankering for the results of action. We have to do it perfectly, performance oriented. That gives the focus. When I try to do the thing perfectly, I have to be fully focused on that action. So that speaks of the focus. It keeps me in the present, but at the same time, not result oriented. Performance oriented, doing it perfectly. For a devotee, it is still easy because he has to offer it to the divine. I cannot offer anything to the divine which is not perfect, which is not good. We always offer the best thing to the divine. So we do it perfectly, offer it to the divine. So that's the idea. So what are the things? Here in the first step it has been spoken of. So this vairagya, aversion for the perishable things, shama, the calmness of the mind, dhamma, the control of the senses, titiksha, forbearance, and relinquishment of all work which entails in hankering for the result. So what it all speaks of. The entire spiritual journey can be spoken of. The sadhana, the spiritual endeavor, can be divided into two categories. The first is, there are certain things we have to take care of immediately. And there are certain things which in the long term, gradually we have to take care of. To give an example, that a flood prone area, there are two types of relief. One is short term relief, one is long term. When the flood prone area, when the flood is there every year. So sometimes we find that the relief is ready. We know that whenever there is a torrential rain, and then this flash flood is going to be there, and we are ready with all the food, some shelters and everything, we are ready. But every year when it happens, you cannot just simply rely on this temporary relief. You have to think of some distress relief, permanent solution. So what they do, even in India, we find that as we cannot relocate this population to other place, it's not possible. It's a huge settlement has already developed in some flood-prone area. So now they devise some plans. They will be building houses on the same place, but with pillars, so that the ground floor is just pillars. So that when the flood is there, they are not drowned. They're living in quite high first floor. In the village, they use the tube well, the hand pump tube well. Now, of course, the things are changing. But that tube well, in a flood, they cannot get, everywhere there is water, but they don't get the fresh water, the drinking water, because that hand pump has got submerged in the flood water. So what is the distress relief, permanent relief? In the village you will find on a pedestal the pump has been built. So that even the flood is there, the pump, that hand pump is still above the water level because it has been built on a pedestal. So you can still access the fresh water. So these are long term. In long term, these are the remedies. So in spiritual practice also there are two things. One is short term remedy and there is a long term remedy. What actually speaking of? See, when we speak of that, when we are taking a birth, as we are born in a particular incarnation, that of all this sanchita karma, not all will be fructifying in this life. There are so many karmas which is stored in my psyche, in my subconscious mind. Not all will be fructifying. Only the prarabdha, only particular karma will be fructifying. Not only that, only particular vasana will be this is in Yoga Sutras, it has been spoken of very nicely. As per my birth, particular vasanas will be manifested, others won't be manifested. To give a common example, that we jokingly say that as we believe in reincarnation, most probably we were in previous birth some grazing animal, who knows? And as a grazing animal, we were constantly nibbling the grass. That was our food. Now, as per sanskara is concerned, that what I like, that remains stored in my psyche. It's not lost, it is there, saved there. So now, as in a human birth, seeing the grass, I'm supposed to salivate because it is there in the subconscious mind, the liking for the grass. But in the Yoga Sutra, very nicely, they have been to mention that all the vasana doesn't manifest at a time. As per your birth, whatever vasana is favorable for that birth, that will manifest. So there are some vyakta vasana and there are many vasana which are avyakta. Now I can take care of my vyakta vasana through vairagya. That the things which are perishable, there are so many things. I most probably have attachment. But in this life, there are certain things for which I cling to. I may consciously practice vairagya for all those things. Shama, Dhamma, everything which has been spoken of in this mantra, they are something which are manifested on which I am practicing. But my mind has so many avyakta vasanas that will manifest again later. Then how to take care of them? I cannot take care of them consciously. As Sri Ramakrishna, when he was passing by the side of a bridge across the Ganges. In those days, in Calcutta, the Howrah Bridge was yet to be built. Some floating bridge was there. Lot of boats, they were all tied together and they were anchored with innumerable, many ropes. They were tied to a stump on the shore on both the sides. So that used to be the bridge. So the boats cannot just simply float away. They're all kept together and they're all tied with a rope to the stumps on the bank of the Ganges. Seeing that, Ramakrishna, who immediately had a very keen observation, and immediately he will find out some wonderful allegory from his observation. Immediately seeing that bridge, he told a very interesting thing. He told that that's how we all are bound because of all our desires. Innumerable they are. And what he told, if I cut one of the ropes, still the bridge is intact because there are so many other ropes to simply keep it intact. So even if you cut one rope, that's of no use. So with all my conscious effort, I may get rid of one vasana. How to get rid of others? So the sadhana, the entire sadhana, even in Bhagavad Gita, they speak of what? Abhyasa and Vairagya. So here also 69 speaks of Vairagya. That all the Vyakta Vasana, I am having Vairagya. So if we consider our psyche, it's what? There are innumerable desires. Each desire actually represents a particular mental module. But they are all hooked to the ego, the sense of this limited individuality. This I and mine, aham, mama, everything, all these thousands of desires are all hooked to that. So this ego, this mamatva, this ahankara, this is the hub of the will of my personality. And all those innumerable desires are like the spikes which are connected. You know, the will has a hub and so many spikes. That makes the will. Now, if one spike breaks, the other spikes still keep the will intact. Now, all the Vyakta Vasana are like the spikes which are visible, which I can take care of. So that's what I am doing with the Vyakta Vasana. So that's all these practices are linked to that Vyakta, Vairagya, Shama, Dhamma, Titiksha, and this Nyasa Prasaktam, Akhila Karmanang Bhrisham. All these are related to the Vyakta Vasana. So first sadhana is to get rid of all of them through the resolution of Vairagya. This I have to do. Shama, Dhamma, Titiksha. Why I have to do that? Because I have to calm down my mind for abhyasa. That the hub of the will is my ego. If I can get rid of the hub of the will, then all the spikes, whether they are manifested or not manifested, they all will collapse because they are all hooked to the hub. So there are two sadhana. One sadhana is taking care of the manifested desire to calm down the mind. Unless I calm down the mind, I cannot practice. What will be the practice? The constant thought process that I am the Atman, I am the Brahman, I am not this body, not this mind, not this senses. This thought will be constantly hammering the ego, the hub. So this is the new mental module which we are producing, that sadhana, that abhyasa is this constant thought, this contemplation that aham brahmasmi, I am the Brahman, I am not this body, not this mind, not this senses. So this is the thing which will take its own time to get rid of the hub. With this constant contemplation. Once you get rid of the hub, now you need not think of the Avyakta Vasana. They also are bound to collapse. So first 69 speaks of calming down the mind by taking care of the Vyakta Vasana, so that your mind is now prepared for the next sadhana, which is the long-term one, the long-term sadhana, which will get rid of the hub of your personality, your ego, so that all the vasana, whether it is Vyakta or Avyakta, they all collapse once for all. Again and again we resort to these, parables of Ramakrishna. That Sri Ramakrishna used to say that renunciation doesn't happen sequentially, one by one. He used to say that the real renunciation happens once for all, in one go. And he used to tell a very funny parable. That a man, a villager, was going to have a dip in the village pond. So he was just wearing a loincloth and was just having a towel on his shoulder, nothing else. And he was about to leave the house to go have a dip in the pond. And the wife suddenly called him back and told, just see how attached you are. That our neighbor, he has developed such a tremendous detachment. And this man was a bit puzzled. He was surprised that why suddenly his wife is saying that our neighbor has developed detachment. Then he asked that what have you seen in him that makes you feel that he has developed detachment? So it's a very funny allegory. And now this wife says that man has 12 wives and he is leaving them one by one. And now this man says, oh, you are a fool. Can anyone renounce one by one? Do you want to see what renunciation is? And he left once for all, never returning back. He went. No one knew where he went. He was just wearing just had a loincloth and had a towel on his shoulder. He never came back to pack his belongings, to make arrangement for his life of a wandering monk. Nothing. Immediately, in a flash, that renunciation has happened. That's the example, wonderful example Ramakrishna is giving. So, that's the renunciation, that para vairagya in the Yoga Sutras. You can, if you study this, do the comparative study, it's very nice, you can link up very nicely. In Yoga Sutra, they speak of vairagya and para vairagya. The 69th sloka speaks of vairagya. But para vairagya, that where all the mental modules will fall off once at a time, taking you to that nirvana sukha, nirvikalpa samadhi. That's been spoken of in the 70th verse. What it is saying? Tata, after you have calmed down your mind with your resolution, now, tata, sruti, tat mananam, satatva dhyanam, chiram, nitya nirantarang munehe, tatah avikalpam paramitya vidwan, ihaiva nirvana sukham samrichati. So then come hearing, tatasrutihi. After, to a certain extent, you have calmed down your mind. Now you have to hear to these words of the scriptures, tatasrutihi. And then have to reflect. When you hear, immediately, you may not have a very proper understanding of it. So you have to do manana, cogitate upon it. So for that, shraddha is required. Sravana can be result in ripen to manana only if you have shraddha. If after hearing you feel that I am very intelligent and these words of the scriptures are all mere nonsense, so at the very first you reject it, then there is no scope for spiritual contemplation. If I have the humility to accept the fact my intellect is not yet developed to understand the intricacies of the scriptures, let me try to cogitate upon it. Let me have faith in them, that they must be true. I am not yet sufficiently evolved to understand the truth. Let me cogitate upon it. So that's the reflection. You reflect. And with the reflection, what happens? A time comes when all the doubt starts falling off. Your mind becomes clear and you get an intellectual conviction. And when Swami Vivekananda was teaching the brahmacharis in Belur Math, the scriptures, the Upanishads, suddenly he asked the brahmacharis, what is the use of studying the scriptures? It is not going to give you realization, but still there is a utility in studying these Upanishads. And the brahmacharis were silent, and then Swamiji's answer in one line, it helps to get rid of the cobwebs of the mind. So it clears all the doubts, the clouds of the mind has vanished. You get a very clear intellectual conviction. But that's not all. After that comes nididhyasana, satattvang dhyanam. that meditation on your intellectual conviction. That I have really now realized, intellectually I have understood, I am Brahman. I am not this individual body-mind complex. I am that non-dual reality, which is finding expression as the entire universe, which is non-local reality. It is not local. I am that. And this conviction you have developed, intellectual, but this intellectual conviction is not all. It won't find reflection in your life unless it has taken you to realization through meditation. So that's the satattvang dhyanam. It has to be internalized. Constantly you have to meditate upon that. Now how will it help? That it is hammering that ego, the hub of the will of your personality, to which all the desires are attached. So this satatang dhyanam, nitya nirantaram, constantly. It's not just whenever I feel like. Nitya nirantaram, incessantly, constantly. That's what, who will do it? Munehe. Thus many will be translating Muni as the one who is mauna, silent. It doesn't speak of just the external silence. Muni actually means mananshila, the one who is contemplative. Mananshila. Constantly he is contemplating. He is Muni. Mananshila is Muni. So such a contemplative person who is constantly, he has understood, has developed that intellectual conviction that he is the Brahman. He is one with Brahman. This body-mind complex is just an illusion because of the ego. And constantly meditating on the fact that he is the Brahman. So that's the process which has been spoken of. Tata avikalpam paramitva vidwan. This meditation will take you to that realization of something which has no vikalpa, which is nirvikalpa, which what it means? Vikalpa means all modifications. Vikalpa means modifications. That when I am seeing through my senses, it is a Brahman which is breaking into this, all these forms of nama, rupa, this name and form, artha, kriya, karitva, its purposes. It's only when the consciousness is getting associated with the mind, it is breaking into these vikalpas, all these vikalpa. Beyond, and when meditation, when you get rid of the hub of your personality, the ego, all the mental modules collapses once for all. It falls off, taking you to that realization. It is just like the prism. Your mind is like the prism, and the consciousness is just like the light, white light. When the white light falls in the prism, it breaks into the spectrum of the 7 colors. So it's consciousness alone, coming in association with the mind, breaks into the spectrum of this world of name and form. When you can get rid of the mind, when all the mental modules collapses, because you have got rid of the ego. It is the ego, is the hub of all the mental modules. The chitta subsides. The prism is no more there. The spectrum merges in the white light. And that is the state of nirvikalpa. All the vikalpa is gone. That how this world of name and form is being projected, even with the modern science we can understand. That when just with one example, this example we take again and again, if we understand one perception, all other perceptions can be understood in the same pattern. When I see the red flower, where is that redness? Is it outside? No. It is not that thing, the flower which is red. The light has no color. It has certain wavelengths of energy. So this light falls on the flower, all the wavelengths are absorbed, a particular wavelength is reflected back, that comes and touches the retina of your eye. The light function is over there. Light cannot enter the brain. It touches the retina, the light's function is over. But by touching the retina, it stimulates the optic nerve. And a particular frequency of optic current is produced. It is just like electric current. What is growing to your brain is just the optic nervous current. No light, it is dark. It goes to the so-called color perception center. Actually, it's not perceiving color. It is just a particular optical nerve current is going of a particular frequency. And that frequency is immediately decoded. That redness, the redness is in the mind, hidden. It is all hidden. That redness is now. That which was potential, it manifests. That immediately that enkindles the redness. And that redness comes out through your this mind and the senses through the eyes and is projected on the flower to make you feel the flower is red. And thus you will understand the mind and the senses are projectors. They are receiving something, but what I am seeing is my projection, what I am projecting. And that's creating the universe. So it is a consciousness which is activating the mind, and the mind in turn is projecting the universe. What is outside there, I can never know. It is what I see is the projection of the mind. And these are all vikalpas. When through meditation you have calmed down your mind, have got rid of the mind totally. And that's the wonderful thing which distinguishes the Eastern philosophy and the Western philosophy. In the Western philosophy, the soul is equated with the mind. In Vedanta, in yoga, they say there is a state beyond the mind. You have to go beyond the mind. All the chitta vrittis has to subside, has to totally stop. And then you go to that state. And that is the state which is called tata avikalpam. No vikalpa. Paramitva vidwan. You know that vidwan, the one who is not having an intellectual knowledge. He has sinned. That's why again and again we find in Swamiji's lecture that religion is realization. It is not just believe in doctrines and dogmas. It's realization. That realization has been spoken of as this vidwan. He has realized. Only when you realize something, then only you can be without any doubt. All the confusion, all your doubts fall off. You get tremendous conviction only when you go to the realization. As in our Aratrikam song we sing again and again, this gata sangshaya drira nishchaya. Gata sangshaya. The doubts has become past tense. It is gata. It is no more there. Drira nishchaya. That conviction has developed. How long we can have doubt? As long as we have not realized. We may have a very clear intellectual knowledge of a thing, but still someone more intelligent than me can argue in such a way that my conviction can be totally disturbed. I will be just again confusing. Just say that if I have not seen the ocean, I have read it in the geography book about the ocean. I am yet to see the ocean. Someone can come and say that there is nothing called ocean. And I may believe him because I haven't seen that this book, they are all nonsense. They have what is written is just brainwashing. There is nothing called ocean. But once I have seen the ocean, is this example Sri Ramakrishna is giving the gospel in a very simple word. The one who has sinned, can anyone make him doubt about the existence of ocean? No, it's impossible. So this Vidwan speaks of what has been spoken of very nicely by William James in his book of comparative study of religion. He says that all the religion, when it goes to the state of realization, in the language of the mystics, we find there something is very common. They go to some realization which is something ineffable. They cannot describe it. But it is noetic. These two words are very important. Noetic, ineffable. Noetic means they are sure that they have realized something. Very convinced. No one can. Even if you torture them, kill them, you can never, in any way create that doubt. They will speak because they have related to some dimension of existence where they know nothing can kill them. So they go beyond all fear. That's why in Kathopanishad that one wonderful sloka is there, that for such a person, death becomes food. This Brahmanas and the Kshatriyas become food and death becomes spice. This Upanishads can be very poetic. What it speaks of? that as long as we haven't realized that spiritual relation is not there, what keeps us within the norms of the society? Two things, Brahman and Kshatriya. Brahman speaks of the church, the religion, and Kshatriya speaks of your government who has made some laws. We have to be bound by the laws of the government and of the church. If we are having some faith in religion, the church and the state, this too is binding us. But a man of realization, for him, he has gone beyond that all this church. He has related to some realization. If the church says that saying that I am one with God is a blasphemy, he says, no, I've realized I am one. Jesus has said, and for that Jesus has to be crucified, because he was saying something which was considered as blasphemous. He's one with God. So that's the thing. So Brahman and Kshatriyas, and why his food? So because that is the thing which actually helps to spread the religion. When they are persecuted, their death becomes a spice. That becomes a spice. And that starts spreading. That message starts spreading. So that's Ubhe, this Brahmacha Kshatracha, Ubhe Bhavati Odana. In the Kathopanishad, that mantra is there. So they become fearless. They are not even afraid of death, because they have realized nothing can stop them from saying of what they are convinced. You will find in not in all the religions, in Abrahamic religions mainly it has happened, where we find that speaking of that unitary experience was considered as heretism. And they were persecuted, killed, so many. But we find they were fearless. They were facing that challenges without any fear, because they know they have identified with their inexhaustible source of their existence. Nothing can kill it. They have become one with that. So they are the Vidwan who have went to that type of conviction. When that conviction comes, it comes only in that state of that avikalpa, nirvikalpa. When the mind has ceased to function, you have went to that reality where there is no change. You are there. Ihaiva nirvana sukham samrichati. This is the most interesting thing, most appealing thing in the Vedanta scripture, the word iha. Ihaiva, ihaiva. So it is not that the happiness is not something post-mortem. You need not have to die to go to the heaven to enjoy the bliss of liberation. Ihaiva, here and now. The moment you relate to that dimension of existence, once you realize that, you are Jivan Mukta. Whatever may happen, whether you are killed, you are persecuted, you have to exhaust your prarabdha. As per your prarabdha, there may be a lot of suffering. Nothing can affect you. You know that as Sri Ramakrishna, when he was suffering because of his cancer, and someone asked that, sir, how are you feeling? Is it very painful? His answer used to be, Shorir tar dukkho jane, mon tumi anande thako. The body knows it's suffering, mind is at peace. Mind is always at peace. So what's the idea? Because he has separated himself from the body-mind complex. As in the simple words of Ramakrishna, he has become like a ripened coconut. The coconut, when it is unripe, you will find that the shell and the kernel can never be separated. They're intertwined. But when it has ripened, you take the ripened coconut in your hand and you just shake it, you will find something is moving within. The shell has got separated from the kernel. So that is the ripe coconut. So the one who has gone to that realization, he is like that ripe coconut. And he enjoys the bliss of living. Jivan mukti sukha prapti, hetave janma dharana. The human birth is for that. That with all our modern science and technology, we are trying to intensify the pleasures of life, of senses. But still it is all limited. As Swami Vivekananda told, however we may try, with all our technology, we can never enjoy a meal just the way a dog enjoys the meal. It has the taste buds, very sophisticated taste buds. The smell, the way it can enjoy the flavor. That's why dogs are used for this in all the crime scene scenes. Because from the smell, they can find out the location of the crime, the person, they can all find out. So there's intense sense of smell. The birds also have intense sense of hearing. So this intensity of the sense, with all our technology, we can never have that intense pleasure, the pleasures the animals have. So Swamiji is saying that human birth is not for the sense pleasures. Its uniqueness is this Jivan Mukti. In this birth, I can enjoy the bliss of freedom. Jivan Mukti Sukha Prapti Hetave Janmadhana. The only purpose of human birth is this Jivan Mukti. And that comes through this long-term sadhana. So these are the two sadhanas. And that takes you to beyond this bondage. So how nicely this, even Bhagavad Gita also speaks of Abhyasa Vairagya. The 69th sloka spoke of Vairagya. The Vairagya about the manifested desires. I have to calm down my mind. So this manifested desires I have taken care of by Vairagya. But that's not all. There are so many other desires which are not manifested now, which may manifest later. They are avyakta. They are not sin. How can I take care of them? The only way is by relinquishing the ego, ahankara, to which all the vasanas, be they vyakta or avyakta, are linked. All the desires are linked to the idea of this limited individuality. If the sense of limited individuality is gone, they all fall apart. So the second 70th sloka speaks of the process of getting rid of that hub. That is through abhyasa, the constant contemplation on your intellectual conviction that you are the Brahman. That is hammering of the ego. And then that will take you to that nirvana sukha by going to the state of nirvikalpa samadhi, where all the mental metals has fallen off, the prism has been removed, the spectrum has merged with the white light, and now you know this entire universe is just a projection. You can never get attached to something which is just a mere projection. We get attached to the thing only when we have a sense of reality. As Swami Vivekananda's example, which explains us the idea of Jivan Mukti, that he says that when I was passing through the deserts of Rajasthan as a wandering monk, I was thirsty and I was in search of water, and suddenly I saw a huge reservoir, just at a distance. I started proceeding towards it, and suddenly I saw the reservoir vanished. It's not more there. I was proceeding, it appeared to be as if the distance was not reducing. It was first it appeared as if the distance is still the same. I am moving, but still it appears to be still ahead. And suddenly it was no more there. And then what happened? It made me remember that till now I have studied about Mirage in my textbook. So I had an intellectual understanding. But intellectual understanding is not all. That's why Nididhyasana is required. That through manana, through your study, you have that intellectual understanding of the Mirage. You may feel, I have understood. But only when for the first time you have seen that what Mirage is, now the real realization has came. What's the result? Next day, when again he is saying, I'm walking through the desert, again I'm thirsty. And as I am again back to my senses, I again see that huge reservoir, again I see. But there's a huge difference. Yesterday it dragged me. Today it cannot. It has lost the power to pull. It has lost the power. So renunciation is not something forceful that I have to get rid of it. No. It becomes spontaneous. Because you have that conviction now. It is not there. It is a mere projection. It cannot drag you anymore. And that's the state when you have that nirvana sukha. The world has lost the power to drag you. So the question of clinging doesn't come. It has automatically, spontaneously fallen off. You don't have to forcefully, by taking a resolution, get rid of anything. Renunciation has become spontaneous. And that only can give you that happiness. As long as I'm struggling to get rid of the desire, it's of course not a happiness. Happiness comes when the desires has fallen off. Nothing can disturb me. And that's the nirvana sukha samrichhati. That even in this life, one realizes the bliss of nirvana. That's the state of Jivan Mukti. So this has been spoken of in these two slokas. The 71st sloka, with which we will conclude our discussion today. So now, after saying this, now what's our goal of life? To know what is not the self and what is the self, so that through the manana I can get that conviction about the self, and then my nididhyasana will start. So this manana, Sravana Manana has to precede nididhyasana, and for that I have to have a very clear understanding of what is self and what is non-self. That has been spoken of in the 71st verse. What it is saying? Yat bodhavyam tavedanim atma anatma vivechanam taduchyate maya samyak srutva atmani avadharaya. So this, each and every word is very significant. So now, yat bodhavyam, this Tavedani. Now I am going to tell you fully about what you ought to know. What? Atma, Anatma, Vivechana, the discrimination between the self and the non-self. So listen to it. Taduchyate maya samyak. Listen to it with full focus, concentratedly. Srutva atmani avadharaya. And decide about it in your mind. This speaks of, after hearing with Shraddha, go on doing this manana, and then you will develop that intellectual conviction, and then only this meditation is possible. Once till you have that intellectual conviction, then you can never meditate. Once you have that intellectual conviction, then your meditation starts. So this speaks of what has been spoken of in the previous 70th verse. That now it is saying that as you have to resort to that nididhyasana. So before nididhyasana, Sravana Manana is essential, so that you develop an intellectual conviction, and that's been spoken of in the 71st. That so after hearing Sravana, what is self, what is non-self, you have to now, I cannot make you understand. Now you have to, through your mental cogitation, develop that intellectual conviction. So then only you can have an understanding of the Atma, that is Atmani Avadharaya. How you have after hearing Srutva Atmani Avadharaya, and then your contemplation starts, and that will take you to that ultimate realization. So in short, in these 3 slokas, the teacher is as if giving the answer to the 4th question, that how to get rid of the bondage. So with this, we stop our discussion today. We will take now one by one, the guru, the teacher, will be enumerating all the layers of non-self, what all constitutes the non-self, what is not self. So that will be described by the teacher from it's quite a number of verses, from 72 to 123. All these verses will be describing that what is non-self. We will gradually take up those verses in the subsequent classes. So with this, we stop our discussion today. Thank you all. Namaskars.